A week after Ukrainian commandos cleared the last few Russian troops hunkering in the besieged PJSC Vovchansk chemical aggregate plant in Vovchansk, in northern Ukraine's Kharkiv Oblast, the Russians sought revenge. It ended in disaster for the Russians. Assaulting Ukrainian positions northwest of the 30-building chemical campus, the equivalent of half a Russian battalion, 17 MTLB armored tractors, 3 tanks, and no fewer than 100 infantry, crashed into a wall of Ukrainian firepower. The Ukrainian Army's 57th Motorized Brigade blasted the Russian assault group with hovering drones dropping grenades, among other weapons most likely. When the smoke cleared, 16 MTLBs and a tank lay wrecked. There were literal piles of dead and mangled Russians around the smoldering hulks. Now the guys are finishing off the remaining infantry, one Ukrainian blogger reported. It's not hard to understand what happened. The Russian infantry rode into battle on top of the 13-ton MTLBs, around 10 men per vehicle, apparently calculating that the top-down drone threat was less serious than the bottom-up threat from mines. It wasn't a totally unreasonable assumption. Obsolete, thinly armored MTLBs are notoriously prone to burn when struck from below by mines. But the Russians seemingly underestimated how much damage the 57th Motorized Brigade's grenade-dropping drones could inflict on massed mechanized forces. The Ukrainians have steadily improved their drone-dropped munitions, adding more sensitive fuses and more powerful explosive fills. So the top-riding infantry rolling toward the chemical plant may have been fairly safe from mines, but they were catastrophically vulnerable to drones. This is a problem for the wider Russian military as it pulls more 1970s vintage MTLBs out of long-term storage to replace some of the thousands of newer and more heavier BMP fighting vehicles the Russians have lost in 31 months of hard fighting in Ukraine. The infantry attached to these MTLB units will face the same impossible choice. Risk mine blasts while riding inside the old tractors, or risk drone attacks while riding atop them. It's not a uniquely Russian problem, of course, as the Ukrainian armed forces are also regenerating old MTLBs in order to replace newer and heavier vehicles they've lost. But the Ukrainians are defending in more sectors than they're attacking. The Russians are attacking in more sectors than they're defending. The defending Ukrainians can leave their MTLBs behind and dig in. The attacking Russians often have no choice but to roll out in their death trap vehicles and try to cross contested terrain in order to reach Ukrainian lines. Unless and until the war's momentum shifts and the Ukrainians go on the attack more widely along the 700-mile front line, Ukrainian troops can, for the most part, wait for Russian troops to come to them. More and more, the Russians will attack on top of aged armored tractors, easy targets for hovering drones. Not only that, soldiers of the 79th Air Assault Brigade fought off a massive Russian attack in the Donetsk region. This time, the Russians used 19 pieces of military equipment, including tanks, to break through the Ukrainian defense. The paratroopers report that the invaders sent 11 armored combat vehicles, with infantry supported by 8 tanks, into battle near the village of Kostyantinivka in the Kurakov sector. However, the movement of the Russian invaders' column was detected and immediately fired at. Ukrainian defenders used artillery, strike drones, and drones with drop munitions to destroy enemy vehicles and infantry. Thanks to the coordinated combat work and strong resistance of the Tavria Brigade paratroopers, 4 tanks and 2 armored vehicles with the invaders were destroyed. It is worth noting that the Ukrainian defense forces have been fighting off massive Russian assaults in the Kurakov sector of the Donetsk region for a long time. The invaders have been using armored vehicles and large numbers of infantry to attack Ukrainian positions and settlements. However, despite such assaults, Ukrainian defenders continue to hold their positions and destroy a significant amount of Russian equipment Tarny recently reported that during a massive assault on the positions of the Ukrainian 79th Air Assault Brigade, the invaders engaged 44 units of military equipment. As the enemy approached the paratroopers' positions, the unit's aerial reconnaissance detected the enemy, and artillery started to fire on it. In addition, some of the enemy's vehicles were blown up by mines and left behind. Several vehicles were hit by FPV drones.
Наводчик, заряжай. Огонь. Огонь.